Hey, what's up everyone? I'm gonna tell you a quick story that I think might be helpful to you. And so I decided to film this while walking in this park for exercise, of course. And this story will really help you, hopefully, when it comes to two things. One is improving your own happiness based off scientific principles. Um, but that's more of the minor things since I've done a lot of videos on that already. This is mainly more so for the second thing I want to teach you today, which is a huge realization on perfectionism and how to overcome it, and some insights I learned myself on overcoming perfectionism. So it's actually quite interesting. So I actually want to start with the second one since it's the more important of the two and also the cooler one. So there's a bit of a story behind this. So today I was started watching a bunch of YouTube videos like I always do, and I tend to watch a lot of like information videos like this one. Maybe you do too. So there's usually a lot of like how-to fitness advice videos and stuff like that. Other how-to advice videos on like fashion and like grooming and all this other stuff. And the problem with all that, which I realized today, was that videos like that tend to breed perfectionism because these channels, one of them is teaching men's fashion, another is real men real style, another one is alpha m. All these channels pump out content every day, and it's how to be good at this thing, or how to tie your shoes right, or how to adjust your watch so it looks good, or how to make sure your collared shirt is perfectly buttoned and collared. And you can get overwhelmed by all these details and features and things you're supposed to do, and breed a sense of perfectionism because you think you have to be perfect at all these different things. And same thing with fitness. It's like, oh, how can you get your abs more chiseled, or how can you get this tiny muscle in the back of your neck in between your shoulders that no one's ever heard of to be a bit bigger, and all these different things. You can get really overwhelmed with perfectionism. So I didn't realize that this was really a big issue until today when I started watching some vlogs. So there's this one vlog that I was watching. I tend to watch vlogs too, not as much as YouTube videos, but there's plenty of big vlog channels that I've roughly been keeping up to date with in the past. Kind of lost touch to focus on, important stuff like creating my own content, building a following, all that stuff. But stumbled across this one vlog through a video that was teaching people how to grow their own channels from a well-known influencer in the space who does that, which is video influencers. So they did an interview with a travel vlogger, which led me to his channel, where he kind of just films his life as well as him traveling. And his story was interesting because he kind of just started out filming his everyday life, which was kind of boring, and then he got better and better at it, and he was really smart. He used geo-based keywords to get search traffic, and long story short, now he somehow scrapes out a living traveling the world doing this. So anyhow, his name's like Eric Kahneman or something like that, and I ended up watching a number of his videos just because I had the time. And one of the videos really struck a chord with me, and this is where it's important for you, so listen up. So in this video, he was kind of just showcasing his life in New York, and he showcased his apartment, and it was shocking because like a lot of the things that I struggle with, maybe you struggle with, he struggles with too. I wouldn't say struggle, but he was just as bad as me in many areas. He showed me his apartment room, which was really messy, and he showed me how small the apartment was. It was literally like 200 square feet, which was so small that he he had to like, he couldn't even really walk in between the apartment. And you know, he even showed that there's like mice that would like scurry through his apartment while he slept. I didn't see the actual mice, but he mentioned them, that it would happen when he slept. And he also showed that it cost like a boatload of money, moderately, like $1,400 a month to live there. And it was above like a really stinky downtown sushi restaurant. So I just found that really interesting. It really struck a chord for me personally, because I saw his latest videos, which wasn't that much later. And, you know, of course he's, you know, living it up now, but I just think, you know, not that long ago he wasn't. And he also happens, even back then, was quite successful in a lot of ways that I was not. So, for example, he had a incredible girlfriend, very beautiful. He was a model himself. She's like a model as well. Incredible life. And yeah, he's messy, and he, you know, he's still trying to make ends meet in New York. And the fact that it was New York also struck a chord for me, because you know, for me, I've been hearing about New York a lot, and each time I hear about it, it's usually through a YouTube channel or another big media influencer of some sort. And they always talk about New York and LA and these big cities as like the city of opportunities, where everything's happening. And I think people go there, or at least part of me made the myth or mistake of assuming that people go there and, you know, they're living it up and it's glamorous, which can be the case sometimes. Of course, we all know that there's people who kind of like, you know, are waiting tables and have a gringy apartment like this, but we tend to forget about that, and we focus on those Instagram or other social media photos or videos where it's kind of like all you see are the expensive apartments and mansions in New York. So it was kind of a big reminder, in conclusion, that, you know, you don't have to be perfect at everything in life. So to stop rambling and to kind of wrap it up with a conclusion, my big conclusion is that it's a reminder that, you know, you can still achieve levels of success and happiness in life, and achievements, and without having it all, in that sense. And that might be a cliche lesson for some of you, but it's a great and important reminder nonetheless. And for many of you, it might be a new lesson. I know I've learned this lesson through many experiences in life numerous times, but oftentimes you forget, and then you have to stay alert and let life remind you in another form to keep you back on track. And it's, of course, gratitude matters as well, because it just shows you that, like, all these things that you have, you should be grateful for. That guy, he could barely even move in that apartment. It was kind of gross, and he was paying through the roof for it. Yet, you know, some of us, we have more space or more opportunities or something else. Maybe it's education, maybe it's family, but we end up taking those for granted. Other than that, I think another big thing is the overall message of what I wanted to start with, which was perfectionism. How do you deal with it? How do you overcome it? And it ties back into that whole story, which is that it's not a magic pill that will cure everything, but think about that story and how it can help with your perfectionism. Do you really need flawless everything? Probably not. Sure, a cleaner room helps. Organized pillows, chiseled abs, perfectly collared, tailored suit. All those details might help, but don't beat yourself up. Even this guy, you know, he still had all these things that he was dealing with. I think the big secret when it comes to a lot of that is pretty much I would call it the doing the 20% that gets you 80% of results. So what that means is, for him, maybe he didn't have like the most chiseled, finessed fashion sense and all that other stuff, but he did make an effort to actually clean his room, to actually go outside and exercise, all those big things that make the big efforts, and I think that's really important. And I'm specifically talking in like the dating sense. A lot of people might, in dating, get wrapped up in perfectionism because they think, I need to be perfect in everything. My shoelaces have to be tied in the perfect precision knot. I have to have a gorgonzola tie knot when I have the suit on, and all these fancy stuff, and everything has to be precise. But it's like, no, dude. The main things are having a suit that fits well, and having those basic, all-encompassing things figured out, having enough physical fitness so that you look better than most guys. You don't have to be like perfectly flawless, like, you know, you're about to compete in the World Championship Mr. Olympia fitness competition. You just have to be better than most. So I think that's a huge distinction that most people don't get. Like, they beat themselves up and over focus in one area out of familiarity. I think a lot of people do that. For me, this type of avoidance of and this is a huge thing for a lot of people, avoidance of their weaknesses because they are familiar with their strengths. It may work when you're trying to be world class at a precisionally focused sport or skill, and you might make a lot of money from it. But for a lot of other stuff like dating, or more all-encompassing activities like CrossFit or triathlons or decathlons, where there's multiple skills involved, if you don't hone up on your weaknesses, those will destroy you when it comes to your strengths. For example, decathlons are a great one. If you fail at one of the events, doesn't matter how high you score at the others, you're disqualified. Similarly, for dating, take me as an example. Getting people to convince that I am smart is the easy part. I can do that fairly easily, run circles around people, but it breeds familiarity. And a lot of people like me, nerds, would rather spend another 5 hours trying to become smarter when they're smart enough, rather than spend even just 5 minutes extra going to the gym, because of that fear and discomfort and familiarity. And of course, you probably already know deep down that that's not the best solution. You got to face those fears. You got to shore up those deep weaknesses that are repelling people. So that's just a bonus lesson in there about, you know, kind of showing up your weaknesses. And then, of course, you know, I think more so in earning money, you can kind of avoid that. Just avoid your weaknesses, delegate your weaknesses, and double down, triple down, and focus on your strengths. And that does work. But from my studies of successful people and science and all that other stuff, I can't say the same thing applies when it comes to those other venues I mentioned, like dating. So that's it in a nutshell. To wrap it up, 3 action steps for you. 1, if you are working with perfectionism, as I said, take a look at some of the real behind the scenes efforts of some of these people you admire, or even, people who are not that successful, but more so realistic to where you are now. And you might realize that they have a lot of problems just like you, yet they've still achieved so much, or to achieve something that makes you admire them. So the point there, and you can kind of see, this park is huge. There's a lot of trees here. You can kind of see that, hey, you don't have to be perfect at everything or have everything precise in your entire life. Of course, I think that's the worst type of perfectionism, because it's so all-encompassing, life perfectionism. The second takeaway is on weaknesses and strengths. Assess your goals, and again, if it's earning money, again, you can delegate or outsource, or get someone else to work on your weaknesses for you. Otherwise, if it's not, and if it is something like dating, try and face your fears and work on your deep weaknesses that are repelling people, and stop trying to weasel it out by just sticking with what you're super familiar with, your strengths, whether it's intelligence, which is for me, or you could be the opposite. You could be one of those athletes or jocks who are really fit, but people don't think you're that intelligent. Therefore, you may be really familiar with going to the gym all the time, doing pull-ups, but not so much with the opposite, which is watching more videos like this one, or reading books, or listening to audiobooks or podcasts, and getting smarter so you can demonstrate that you're also smart. So it could be flipped depending on whatever it is you're doing. Similar if you're doing CrossFit or a decathlon. Those weaknesses are usually pretty obvious. I've seen that also. I've been to CrossFit gyms where it's very clear after a while that some of these athletes, if they wanted to compete one day, they have to kind of do everything. Pull-ups, push-ups, all these different exercises like squats, snatches, cleans, and they don't end up doing them because they're super familiar with one specific exercise that they just stick to, and that's usually rowing or something else, and they get really good at rowing and maybe a couple other things, but they avoid, or they barely do, maybe once a month, those important exercises. And I was really into CrossFit. I read Rich Rock, he's actually CrossFit 4 times in first place in the CrossFit games, like this world champion competitive competition. And in his book he said that's the bane's another word for danger of failing at CrossFit. Like, if you want to fail at CrossFit, he says one quick way is to just avoid your weaknesses. He says in CrossFit you have to be good at everything, every type of movement and exercise, and he's noticed that a lot of people who don't end up rising through the ranks and beating their competitors in athletic CrossFit